But keep leading love. I'm listening to this, and I was going over with Jesus and his statement on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. And for their ignorance. They grew up in a paganistic society. They grew up and worshiped these demigods, these false idols, as the Bible calls them. And so Jesus forgave them because they didn't understand, but that will be no longer. Everybody, no matter where you are in the world, even the darkest part of North Korea, as Mary, who was in my small group, went in, they know the Bible. So there is no part of the world that isn't exposed. So there is no forgive them, for they not know what they do. Willful ignorance is no excuse. So you can't go around, and I used to tell people, even if you don't believe in the Bible, I studied everything. Now, I didn't study the Book of Mormons, but I studied the Hindu religious texts and Buddhist religious texts and Muslim religious texts and obviously Jewish religious texts and many others. People that believed in crystal power and their theories and so on. And I went out and seek to understand their beliefs and how they flourish their beliefs. I mean, how this came to be. So I seeked out courses. I independently studied. That's how we got the history of religion at Loyola. I took, starting with the Sumerians, the first known civilization and religion, and how they used it as a tool and everything else. Because people say, oh, religion is just there to control the masses. No, religion is there to give you guidance. God gives you free will, but it's there to guide you, to show you what is right and wrong. Man didn't know the difference between right and wrong. Truly. Man didn't know these premises. It wasn't natural to have these. So man warred with each other, killed each other, took from each other, lied to each other, cheated each other, and so on, and did not understand these premises. So to create civilization, God had to come up with rules for mankind. That's where Moses comes with the 10 Commandments. But these are guidances so you can structure the foundation of laws. These are guidances so civilization can move forward smoother and more fluently. We know the difference between right and wrong in each other. And somehow we've lost that. The essence of that. And that's what the Bible teaches. It gives you the rule to create the foundation for society, for enlightened people. Jesus, by Hindus, is considered an enlightened being. Enlightened. And so it is these enlightened people that give you their knowledge, share their wisdom with you so you can structure a better society and move forward in righteousness and justice. And we've had lots of them through society that have done these things to help better mankind move forward properly. So, no, it's not about controlled. It's about giving you education. The Bible talks about wisdom, talks about knowledge, but knowledge applied incorrectly is the anti-wisdom. So excellence before God talks about taking knowledge and applying it correctly, effectively, so it furthers mankind, enriches mankind, moves mankind forward in a positive way. So, no, it's not to enslave mankind. That's what all those ungodly people want to think. No, actually, some of them are just satanic. Some of them think it, and they spout it off. Others, they know it's not true, but it acts in their best interest. So they want to tear down the Bible, tear down the foundations of God, destroy him, curse him, crucify him, betray him, deceive him, belittle him, so they can build themselves up. Where those that are true servants of God humble themselves before God, and they do the right thing. So this is why certain cultures call it blasphemy, because they believe that you show God the respect he deserves, like Simon and my small group. If you truly understand the Bible and all God's done for us, and that's the point of Jesus dying on the cross, that you would humble yourself before God. You wouldn't go in there and be blasphemous and arrogant and tout your superiority like the Pharisees to God. And so they wanted to be the gods. And they wanted to tout this injustice. They were stealing and lying and cheating and deceiving. They weren't doing things righteously. And Jesus is a reformist. As he many times read the letters from Paul and John and others, it's about reforming society and getting them to do the right thing. And so these people that were doing all the corruption, all the evil deeds, they didn't want it. There were a lot of thieves. Even one of the emperors of Rome, and I don't know if it was during Jesus' time, which one, he stole from the people by taking the precious metal out of the coin and substituting it with a more cheap metal. And so he cheated all of the Roman people. He paid for his projects by stealing from society. He paid for his projects by theft. They just didn't know it, the Roman people, that they were getting defrauded. And so he paid for all his projects through theft, through deception. So this is a corner going off topic, that there's Spy Bar and Sound Bar, and I'm still waiting for this place to open, and there's another place down. These can be thriving music clubs and dance clubs. And you know, I love dance clubs and that because people don't focus only on drinking. And if you don't know how to control beats per minute and tempo, I did this. Now, DJs sometimes didn't like it because I destroyed their format. But my concern is making sure people don't overconsume. And so let's go into this, and I'll step off of talking, but this is all godliness. You know this, right? Excellence before God, doing things right. So, unbeknownst to them, like Robo and others, that sometimes they thought I was stepping on their turf, but I have a higher agenda. Not only am I worried about the music it's playing, I'm worried about the customers and the service staff and everything's going on, making sure we get things comfortable for people. People are happy. We're anti-violent, and violence went to nothing under me. And we didn't have problems with drunks, very rarely ever. And the whole point was, I have to do things, and I'm watching the rings with the service staff and the bar, and if I see people consuming too much, I up-tempo the music. I want them to get away from the bar. I want them to get up and on the dance floor. I want them to put down the drinks. I want them to stop consuming. I want them to start burning off the liquor and go out there and work up some muscles and exercise. Truly, dancing creates euphoria. Truly, you feel good. We used to do at El Charles salsa night. And you know, my two best customers, a Puerto Rican male and an Asian female, best friends, did not date. And I had big hots for the Asian female. But they were just salsa buddies. They were best friends, and they show up to clubs and just salsa together. They did not date. They were just best friends. But he loved the salsa. She loved the salsa. And wouldn't that be better for Puerto Rico? Instead of all the freaking crime and violence and improving their health and then getting into the Latin culture of dance. You know that's why Latins dance a lot. Do you understand this? They have a lot of energy and they need to expend it. And so this is why their dances are more energetic in that, because of their skin color. They need to activate the body. And so they need to heat the body up to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. But you don't understand. People that originally put this together figured out things with the body without modern science. They actually did a lot of understanding. And they put things together, and they realized that if people are more active in these dances, see, you got to get back to the core of things. And there was a book talking about why airlines started and so on. But people wrote this music, and this is leadership, really. If you go into essence, these are incredibly intelligent people that were leading countries, that were very gifted. And they realized that if they can get people doing certain things, it was better for the culture. So if they can get them engaged in song and dance and stuff, that it would bring down violence and bring up positivity and so on. Truly, there were some incredibly intelligent leaders back then. But usually the bad people, and this is why Noah came, usually the bad people outnumbered the good people, and they always seem to rule everything, the wicked. And it's been a horrible thing. If you look at all these horrible people at the top, like Bernie Madoff, he managed $50 billion. He was a thief from the beginning. And I just bring him out, and I can give you many others. And these people were incredibly dirty and filthy, but they were really good people. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. It goes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. But you'll find these people like them that understand society, understand structure, and you'll find them through history, and they understand how to structure society so it's effective. But the problem is, they're not power-hungry people, and they want things to work right, and they're not greedy people. They get things through their righteous deeds, and they manage their resources. And they don't talk about it, but these incredible people, they manage their money effectively in society. Like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle loved the theater. They were big on the theater, and they were big on putting out plays and that. And that's how they communicated. If they could get them into the theater, they could communicate their message. And that's really where you would say movies and TV came from, the theater, and it did. And it was a way for them to communicate to the masses, but to do it in a way that was not, cause riots, and they could communicate to leadership and so on without leadership hurting them or trying to tear them down. So read about the three famous philosophers, because I've read a lot about them, but there's others that did these things, and they realized there's ways to communicate to people that can get them the message, but in a way where they start talking about it and discussing it instead of hurting each other. And so they were effective at delivering the message in a proper way, because they could have been killed at any time. So they understood to deliver it in this way that could get it across effectively. But these are incredibly intelligent people. We don't have incredibly intelligent people where I see these people that are not very learned, and they lead these people like Chuy Garcia. He's a Hispanic. He's a good organized, good guy to watch a baseball game or football game, and let's go get a beer, Chuy. But not a guy you would say is a leader. But he's very likable. And when Karen Lewis nominated him I couldn't believe it. I researched him and I'm like, okay. But also, he's very charismatic. He is a very likable person. He is a good person to get friends, to get people to show up. He's a guy you want to hang out with and have a drink with, but not a guy you would want to lead people. But he's a good motivator in that way. He's likable. He is. He presents himself well, and he's very likable, but he's not the one who's in a drive theory to make things effective. That's just not his skill base. So you have to understand what these individual gifts are. He's more good to work in the press corps. Truly, to be up there and deliver messages in the community and so on. He's not good in a Q&A. He's not somebody who works off his feet. He's not like Dole, is it? Not Dole, but what's his name? Anyways, they're very quick-witted. He's not a quick-witted person like Admiral Stockwell when he was Ross Perot's vice president. He works in think tanks. He's like my partner David. David doesn't give quick responses. They're not good on the podium. They're not trained to think that way. They're trained to ponder on issues for long periods of time and think through it. So they don't give snap responses. So they don't have these quick-witted discussions. And so he looked like didn't look well. He looked unintelligent, but he was by far the most intelligent person on that stage. And that was with, yes, Al Gore. But Al Gore is a better politician. He's quick-witted. He did very well, but his superior was next to him. And by intelligence-wise, he blows Al Gore away. I mean, truly a gifted individual. Now, Gore is good at what he did, but Ross Perot picked a very good, solid vice president who grew up in think tanks and knew theory and could ponder, but he's very slow-moving turtle. Al Gore, very fast, but if you really start getting deep, not much depth. But he's good at giving the snap response to quiet people. So he's very good at that. But again, these individuals learned and came out, and I think entertainment's losing their way. I know it doesn't need to be political and it can be purely entertainment, but I would like some underlining value. Like I can see Superman and Batman and others, and it has this at least something that's brightness in it. That's something that has this resounding good value, like the Petries and so on. A good husband, wife. He worked in advertising. It was good for the advertising industry. That was a great show. But the whole point is it had a moral tone to it. They had separate beds in their bedroom, which I don't think is recommendable, but there could be issues where you would sleep separately in the bedroom. Truly. Where you would sleep apart. So they showed their bedroom and they both had twin beds. And that was the conservatism of the day. They didn't have them in the same bed. Now, they never showed them in the beds, I don't think, but they had twin beds, separate beds. But showing this moral theme, Eddie and his father, and the maid, she was Asian and she took care of the kid. So she was a caregiver and truly who did maid services. She was more taking care of the child than a caregiver like Mr. French. And he takes in and adopts his two orphan, his niece and nephew. But Uncle Bill, niece and nephew, and he adopts them. And Mr. French takes care of them. Uncle Bill's a big businessman. He's can't be there all the time, but Mr. French can be. And he takes care of the house and that. He's a butler, but he's really a caretaker. And so he mends to everything with the house and everything else because Bill is a very busy businessman. But they have moral themes, even the family, like Different Strokes. They have he has his natural daughter who's white, and he adopts two black boys. And it's about raising them and so on. So really good themes and, like good times, a family where both parents work and they're struggling to make sure their kids do the right thing. And so these moral themes, even the TV shows Silver Spoon. And so there tended to be Archie Bunker, you name it. They had lots of moral themes. I had Hong Kong Phooey, the super dog, which was one of my favorite cartoons. He was a super dog. Now, isn't that great for like dog shelters and all that? You have a dog who's a superhero. And he was an Asian, he had Hong Kong Phooey. He was an Asian super dog. Now, I don't know if they've ever seen that in Asia because it was for an American audience, but it was an Asian dog. And it represented Asian people in a positive light. Now, he was more, bumbling. He made a lot of, he fumbled through it. He wasn't perfect, but his heart was there and he tried his best all the time and he made mistakes on accident. And so, but the intent was always to be right, good, always to be going down the right road in that, and he ran into these mistakes accidentally, not on purpose. And so the theme of the show, yes, the writers intended him to make mistakes in that, but the whole point of the nature of his character, that it was truly accidents. It's not what he intended to do, but it happened, and it's kind of funny and lighthearted. But he's going around saving people. And that was positive. And then you had Charlie Chan, who was an Asian detective, who basically all the bad people were white people. And the whole point was they underrated him. And they thought they were superior in intelligence and so on. But then you get, there's McCloud, and he rode the horse in New York. He was a cowboy detective, McCloud, in New York, and he actually rode a horse as well at times. But he was a cowboy, like urban cowboy, but he was a detective. He was a cowboy in the city who didn't fit, And so he was this urban cowboy, and it was a really good show. And then Columbo was San Francisco, I think. Then there was a bumbling detective, I forget his name, with the coat and everything. But they all had these very moral and good things, and they were carried through with this positivity. It's underlining you got to do the right thing. Be good. Do the right thing. Appreciate people. Don't underestimate people. Like Charlie Chan and others. It teaches you don't underestimate people. So make sure you value them correctly. So don't be so fast to misvalue them, to consider them, not up to speed. And that's what it was teaching. Now, you say bumbling detectives, and there are several of them. Even, the Pink Panther had the bumbling detective. I loved it. But the whole point with Charlie Chan and them was that these people underappreciate them and undervalued them, and that's because they were fast to judgment, automatically thought they were superior to their opposition. And it teaches you to come in and be more humble and properly evaluate your opposition. So don't come in with thinking you're superior to your opposition. So it teaches you these people are idiots because they automatically assume they are superior and they were inferior. So again, they need to get back to this and having proper people lead society that can be true leaderships. And a lot of the theater and how they do things and music and what they communicate. And I think they don't teach this. And this is why I love people, all the bands in that, they don't go to music school. They don't learn music theory. They don't go into music history. They don't understand this when they're putting these things together. And it really does a disservice. And that's why I keep on preaching on they got to go to acting school. They got to go to music school. They got to understand the history. They got to understand the theory. They need to be able to put things together effectively. And so we can't do any more fly-by-night people. They just want to wing everything, and they get these, we have all these one-hit wonders. They get one and done, one and done, one and done. Because everybody's winging it. They're throwing it against the wall, seeing what sticks. And I want the industry to change. And I want the industry to have these people understand where they're going and can put together the proper music and the proper theater and so on. And I understand you can get too dry, too technical, but you don't need to take a lot of technical courses. You can do dance and other things. And so some people want to be producers in that. And to be a producer like Gelman on Kelly and Mark, you got to do much more origins of, TV shows. And you got to go down into different theories and camera angles and, themes and demographics. And, that's why you're not on the stage. Those people are more charismatic, and they go the laughs, and they learn how to tell jokes, and they go to Toastmasters and learn to publicly speak and so on. You don't do that behind the camera producing in that. You're supposed to be thinking about everything going on. They're worried about entertaining the audience. You're worried about setting things up properly so they can entertain the audience effectively. So it's a different path. And so those people are going to be more charismatic and more warm and fuzzy and so on. And the people behind the scenes, you're not going to be liked as much. Your job just doesn't put you in that place where you're going to do things that causes you to be well-liked. You're going to be really dry and more technical and eventually bore people, and they're going to be more spontaneous and free-loving, per se. Truly, they will be. And that gives them that, that charisma and everything. But it's a different path. And so you're teaching people to have this, je ne sais quoi and everything. And those are people that are in the move in front of the camera. The other people are in the move behind the camera. They're in the write the screenplays and so on and so forth. It's not like you can't have people that transition into theory. And you can, but there's a different path. And you got to understand that that path is not going to lead you to be the one that's incredibly loved and incredibly liked. You're not going to go out and people are going to be, oh, you're the greatest and so on. You're going to be respected in your industry in that. Truly, if you do really well, you'll be respected in your industry and so on. But you're not going to be this rock star. That's a path choice you chose to choose. And so people don't understand that. And when you start understanding this, you get people in the right place, finding their God-given gift. And so, but all of it comes together and it becomes highly effective and very successful. And we got too much garbage getting thrown against the wall and too many, everybody, I can be an actor, I can do that, I can do that. Well, you have to transcend the screen. And, it takes developing that charisma and harnessing it and making love to the camera. Truly. You have to imagine that's a person and you love that person. When you look into the camera, you're romancing the camera. You're romancing the lens. You have to think, I love that camera. And you're making romance to that camera. Truly. And they can feel that through the screen. They can feel that passion, that love, that care. So it's a little bit different. And they're developing this. And it can transcend and it can emit. And there's people that just, you feel like they connect with you in the audience when you're watching what's going on the screen. Because they can do it right. And so I do believe there are people that have this charisma. It's so well developed that it just transcends and it's emitted through the film itself. And if you particle theory or whatever it may be, I believe there's an essence that is captured. Vampires, or I forget what it is, capturing your aura on this in film and that. But I do believe they capture an aura of you, truly. And when they watch these things, you can feel this connection with this person. And so I do believe there's something with particle theory, maybe in the quantum world and that. There's this entanglement, and they have this ability to bridge this gap. They have that essence about them. And so these are people that go down that path. And so they go into Second City and other places and learn these skills. They go to stunt school. Even as an actor, you have to understand stunts and how to work with stunt people. Even if you don't do the stunts yourself, there should be, you go to stunt school to get trained how to work with a stunt person seamlessly. You have to understand them, appreciate them. They have to understand you, and you can work together as an effective team. So I don't think actors do that, and they don't bridge the gap, and things don't move smoothly between the stunt people and the actors. So there's this MIS information systems that was developed, and that was developed for bridging the gap between programmers and customers. And so they take the programming talk and they put it into plain English and deliver it to the customer. And when the customer wants something, they take it from the plain English and put it into programming terms for the programmer. And so they take the complicated, make it simple, and take the simple and make it complicated. And they do. But the programmers want it in complicated. They want to know how it should be structured and what types of lines of code and so on. And so they have to be able to communicate. And so that's their job. Me and Jen used to talk about my other friend Dave. Now he writes code, but he was an MIS major. And he understands that there's this bridge, and these are the people that are the middlemen. And they bridge this relationship. And yes, MIS majors do implementation in that. They're not writing code. They're implementing what programmers have already did it. And if there's a problem, they can speak to the programmers and get it corrected. So they're the middleman. But they learn how to do both customer interaction and technical interaction. They learn how to talk to programmers. They learn how to be on the sales side and talk to customers. And inside, they learn how to implement what the programmers do and make sure, looking from the customer side, that the programmers designed it correctly to meet the customer's needs. So they're also tweaking it themselves as well, looking back and making sure the programmers tweaked it correctly, that the product is what the customer wants. So they have a lot of responsibility. And that's what my ex, Jennifer Kim, did. Unlike her, Mia, who worked for Accenture, she went to Duke for programming. And she likes writing code. She doesn't customer face. She develops software for customers, or did. And so it's a different skill set. You don't have to worry about interfacing with the customer. You get it from the MIS major, the salesperson, and they communicate to you, and you write out the code, and you work with them, who works with the customer. And MIS is a relationship manager. They go out with the customer. The program doesn't at most of the time, but sometimes they might show up at a meeting because they might have their technical person there as well. And you want to have the technical support just in case there's a question about development. And so sometimes the programmer has to go out on the meeting. But most of the whining and dining is done with the relationship manager, and they go out on it and do it. And that's what I was trying to develop Jen into, relationship manager, my relationship manager. But that's why I told her she needed to be my debutante. She needed to be my relationship manager. But anyways, they get into these roles, so you have to understand. And I don't think they have this, and you get all these people, and they might learn the guitar and they might learn how to sing, but they have no idea what they're doing. And you can't communicate them effectively because they don't really have a background, and you're like, well, I want more C, and hit this, and negative or positive, or do this, or the tone's off, and so on. And it's hard to instruct these people because they don't have this training, and you're trying to guide them through, and they don't really get it. They haven't tweaked their ears to hear their music. They got to play their music and listen back to their music. And so they can hear their music. And so they can hear what they're doing and going back and look. You got to record when you're in a sound studio. You have to do video as well. So they can see how they're positioning their lips. Did they have congestion that day? Did they have, phlegm? Did they truly? What was going on? were they tired and fatigued that strains the vocal cords. But sometimes it makes a good sound. Sometimes, like shooting Platoon, he had them up for weeks before. They were out in tents, camping out, and Oliver Stone would rake them up with loud-sounding music and that and get them up as part of it, and he wore them down. Now, they were studying and everything before the shooting. He had them there for weeks before the shooting studying, but they had to stay there. They ate in the tents. They were outdoor, and he wanted them to look worn down when the movie started. So they were, tired and dehydrated, truly. So they could look battle fatigued. He didn't want them to look fresh. He wanted them to look, and this is a method director, he wanted them to look more of the role, so he got them there early, and then they knew what they were signing up for, and he'd wake them up every couple hours and keep them up. They go back to sleep, he'd wake them up again, and so on. And he did this for several weeks, and they were practicing their lines and everything. When they get up, they got stuff to do. And when it starts the shooting, he wants them to be fatigued and look like they were on the battlefield. So, again, terrorists in Chicago with their cars. I'm not moving. I'm sick of these people terrorizing me with their vehicle. But there's method actors and there's method directors. And so they put them in it to get the experience so they can develop what they need. So when they go into that role, they actually look like they were in battle, that they were doing this. And so he produced some very good films. I saw his JFK film I liked and many others. And so he was much more into method. And he tried to get people into the character, and he guide them and bring them on earlier and do a lot of working with them. He knew what he wanted and how to develop them for these aspects, and he worked with the different characters. And he developed them. This is way before shooting. And so when shooting went, they were on cue, and they developed, and shooting went much faster. So I never heard Oliver Stone going over budget ever. Nothing I've ever read that he goes over budget. He's usually a guy that delivers on or under budget, and his shooting goes very fast once it starts because he spent time developing the people. And how many directors and producers get with the cast and they spend all this time, not just a simple reading, but actually bringing them in, housing them, and spending time with them, sitting down and going over the different roles and doing the script reading with them and preparing them and getting them all ready before you shoot. So these are the exceptional individuals who put in the time, and it takes a lot of time if you're a director and producer in that to spend with these people to develop them prior to shooting. So when you do these things, they function correctly and fast. So when you get into the city of Chicago, you're not like, oh, we need to go back and reshoot this or redo this, or we need more time over here. They know exactly what they're supposed to do. You get it, you're in and you're out. Truly, you're in and you're out. And I don't know if what Ron Howard does or that, but I don't know if they do that with TV shows, that they're really working with them before they shoot it. And they're getting them all ready and what to do and going over the truck and how they grab the hose and everything else before they get on the street, before they get on the set. And so when they're there to film, it goes boom, 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 and they're done and it's a wrap. Truly, they're in and out. That's how they cut expenses. They don't need a lot of time. They set up, they shoot, They break down. They don't do, oh, I need a third, fourth, fifth take. They don't do that. Time is money. They want to get in to the city of Chicago on Michigan Avenue, close it down for a limited amount of time, get it shot, get off Michigan Avenue as fast as possible. So they pay as least amount of money for the licensing, the permitting, and closing it down, and don't want to interfere with what's going on. So these are people that know what they're doing. These are effective directors and producers. So these films and whatever they do, they touch, and they always pay off. But you get these people and they're like, yeah, you can be a slacker, and you come and you did the script reading and you show up. Take 25, take 53. We're out here for 3 days. No, they want to get in country and out of country. We're in Saudi, we're going to be here. We're going to prep everything, and when we get on, you're going to be on the desert, we're going to do this, and it's a wrap, and we're out of here. They don't want them sitting around. They want them to work, and they expect them to be professionals. And so they work with them. They know exactly what they need to do. They're in front of the camera. They're ready. And they say film, and then cut, and that's a wrap. Let's go. Pack it all up. On to the next location. So, again, you can see who's a true professional, but you don't get this with music and anything because these people don't know. Like the manager for the Beatles practiced all that time without him. 7 days a week, they practiced, they learned, they wrote songs, they understood music. So when he got them, he could tell them to do this, this, and that. Even when they had to get rid of the original drummer, they told them he's not technically proficient. Ringo was a studio drummer, but very technically proficient. We don't need somebody that's not technically proficient. You guys are way above. The other three were way above the drummer. The other three wrote music. John, Paul, and George all wrote music, and they were gifted. I think George was the most gifted, but he didn't write as much, but I think George is way underrated. But when they got him, Ringo didn't, the original drummer, he just didn't have that skill set. And so when he was managing them and he needed to accomplish things, the drummer was holding them back. He needed somebody that was highly proficient. He didn't need the big flamboyant everything. He needed somebody who was technically proficient on the drums. I need you to do this beat for at this, C note or whatever. And if you watch, and that's what he did. So he could get into the studio and he can tell them, they understood, and Ringo understood because he was studio proficient. And so once they replaced Ringo, once Ringo came in, that's when they took off. When they were the other one, the drummer was really holding them down. Just not good. And so he told them he's got to go. And so they severed ties with him, and Ringo came in. And so if you go back in the Beatles' history, you have to remember where they were, and they were missing a piece. Once they got Ringo, they had 4 superstars. And so they were just incredibly proficient. It's sad they broke up, but they were incredibly proficient. And so when he was managing them, he could tell them exactly what to do, and they understood that he was incredibly gifted with the music, with music direction and everything. And he could tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and they just did it. And if you watch, I watched the making of the Beatles and all these from a long time ago and reading, and he could tell them exactly what to do, and that was it. It was boom, boom, boom. I need this done this way. Boom, boom, boom. And they understood. But you get these people like off the street like, oh, wow, he's going to be a supermodel. I need you to do this on the runway. What the hell is that? I need you to do this. What the hell is that? They need to have the business in their mind, and you need to do snap, 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 snap. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. We're doing these clothes trains. You're going to be here, 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 here. Got it? Yep, got it. True professional. So you can't have the pretenders. So you can't be taking people off the street anymore. Here's my card. I think you might have the look. Go to acting school. Go to modeling school. Call me after you get done. Let me know how it goes. We'll do a screen test with you. Get proficient. They want to make it. Here's a card. Go out there, get what you need, and come back and talk to me. But that's it. I think you might have the look, but or you might have the voice, but you need all this. And so go out there, get it, and if you're willing to do the hard work, I'll work with you. Because do you know how many one-hit wonders? I'll put it out there on Facebook, but it's unbelievable. These people bust. I've watched so many. It's just one bust out after another, bust out after another. Look at the Who, the Rolling Stones, and those very few, like YouTube, very few of them ever make it that long. They just bust out. They don't have the technical expertise. They can't just keep on doing it and reproducing and so on. But I'm going to leave this video here.